All right, welcome to the How to Crush Local SEO to Get More Patients webinar. This is a webinar designed specifically for dental practices. My name is Dan Bryan, and I am the co-founder of DentalScapes. And I am joined today by my good friend and co-founder, Brian Craig. So, Brian, I wanted to turn it over to you real quick to introduce yourself. Just by way of introduction, DentalScapes, we are a full-service digital marketing agency specifically for dentists. We work with general dentists, pediatric dentists, and orthodontists, and we are entirely focused on generating more new patient appointments with online marketing, as well as re-engaging existing patients to improve your practice profitability. So, Brian, you want to say a few words about yourself and how you got involved in this business to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Thanks. I'm Brian Craig. I run our client services team here at DentalScapes, and I have been all over the digital marketing world for the past, I guess, almost 25 years or so now. I'm old enough that I still remember when Google started. If that tells everybody anything there.
Yeah, you're not alone, and it's been quite the journey. And whenever I say, we've got 40 plus years of digital marketing experience between us, I think, is that good or is that just sad? Um,
It's sad for us. It's good for clients.
I think that's fair. Yeah, that's a better way to think about it than I probably do. Anyhow, really excited to be on the webinar today with so many dentists interested in taking their marketing to the next level. So thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited to spend the next 30 minutes or so talking about local SEO, what that is, and how your dental practice can leverage that to uh, get in front of more potential patients and ultimately convert those audiences into new patient appointments. So let's get started. Let's kick in here, and to start, let's just talk about specifically what we're actually dealing with here. A lot of people on the webinar maybe are familiar with the term SEO or search engine optimization, but today we're really focused on local SEO specifically. And so I wanted to kick it over to you, Brian. What would you tell folks about local SEO specifically? What is that?
Yeah, definitely. So local SEO is a subset of what I would say general SEO is, but it really focuses on people who have local intent in their searches. And when I say local intent, I mean they're looking for a business near them, so like a dental practice near them or an orthodontist near them. And Google has a special set of I'll say, of functionality that is aimed towards helping searchers find these local businesses. And what we're going to be talking about today is how to get your practice visible in these local intent searches.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, as we talk about this, to just sort of give folks a lay of the land when we talk about what the local SEO or local search results actually look like in practice on the Google search engine results page, or what we call the SERP. And so wanted to pull this up and just kind of explore a little bit of what folks are probably already familiar with, but maybe don't know the unique terminology for. When you do a local search, so in this example, we're looking at Raleigh Dentist. That's our hometown, and we're proud to represent. But anyhow, at the very, very top, you're going to see what we call local services ads, or LSAs. And that's actually a paid ad product that appears above anything else, above even traditional Google ads. And right below that, you're going to see what we call the local pack or the map pack. And that is a grouping typically of 3 practices that are prioritized by Google. And that's what we're really focused on when we talk about improving a practice's visibility in local search. Beneath that, you also have what we call traditional organic results, which are also non-paid listings, but they're not as targeted to the local area necessarily. So we've got a number of different elements when we think about the local SEO landscape. But for the purposes of today's conversation, and really the holy grail of achieving dominance in local search, we're really talking about that local map pack or local pack where you have those prioritized practices. And I want to talk a little bit about, real quick, why it's so important to get in those prioritized top 3 positions in local search. And that's simply because we know from research that those 3 practices listed there account for over 70% of clicks to websites within local searches. So essentially, it's not an exaggeration if you're not appearing in the top 3 positions in those prioritized positions on local search. You're simply not getting in front of potential patients. And so, as best we can, we want to get every practice that we work with in those positions so that they're drawing as many eyeballs as possible on their practice and ultimately getting those folks to either call directly or visit the website. Anything else you wanted to touch on there, Brian, as far as what the landscape looks like within local SEO?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would point out is that the SERP page that you showed a slide ago, Google is always updating and always changing how some of these things are laid out. So, some of these you'll see LSAs and then the map pack and then organic. Some of them you'll see traditional Google ads wedged in there somewhere. Um, some markets won't show LSAs, so this is an example, but certainly not the only way that you'll see these layout.
Yeah, really good
And
point. Oh, sorry.
oh no, I was just going to say, and Dan, you make a good point about the 70% of organic clicks, or 70-ish% of organic clicks being within that map pack. Um, Google loves for folks to stay on their properties. So the changes that you'll see as this evolves are going to be to keep people on Google more and to keep people from going to the website less, as much as they possibly can, while still delivering a quality result here.
Yeah. And I also wanted to mention, too, the whole point of why we're even doing this webinar, why we're having this conversation about local search is because, of course, you can use paid products like Google's traditional pay-per-click ads. You can use those LSA ads that we talked about just a moment ago. But when it comes to generating the absolute best return on your investment for your dental practice, when it comes to online marketing, organic search, and in particular, local search, SEO, that is going to consistently deliver you the biggest, baddest bang for your buck. And so that's why we're here. That's the whole point of this. And hopefully, after today's webinar, after this conversation, you'll walk away with some really actionable tactics that you can use to pursue that aim as well. So let's talk a little bit about what influences your practice's position in local search. So getting into that map pack or that local pack that we talked about just a moment ago, I wanted to go over some key ranking factors in local search. And so, Brian, do you want to touch a little bit on some of these here?
Yeah, definitely. So the one thing that I always point out here is notice that over 50% of this is just updating your profile and making sure your website's set up right.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much of this waiting for local search is just the basics. So we're going to be going over some other things there. Reviews are super important. Um, but yeah, you can get a good chunk of the way there just by implementing a couple of simple things that we're going to be talking about in this webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also important to note, too, that like Brian said previously, Google is super dynamic. It's always in flux. And of course, as marketers, we have to stay on top of all of those changes. But one thing that has remained very, very consistent in the past, several years has been the importance of your Google business profile. Like Brian just mentioned, the increasing importance of reviews and also, on-site content that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. But definitely good to stay on top of all of this stuff. But in a world that is constantly changing and ever in flux, there are some general best practices that subscribing to will generally yield good results for your practice on. But let's talk first about, sort of that online business card or calling card for your dental practice. That is the Google Business Profile, or what we call the GBP. Used to be known as Google My Business. If you've seen emails or anything from Google about that in the past, this is the same thing. They're, again, always changing things, always keeping things interesting. But Brian, do you want to talk about some of the foundational elements of the Google Business Profile and how you can optimize that to, increase your visibility in local search?
Yeah. So the most important thing I'm Still amazed a lot of times at the number of practices who have not claimed their Google business profile. So whether or not you have created one for your practice or whether you're actively managing one for your practice, um, odds are there's one out there. You may just not know about it yet. So the first thing you want to do is when you search for your practice, there will be a little option there for it's something like, is this your business, or claim this profile, or the verbiage. The verbiage has changed some um, periodically, but you want to claim that profile first, and that gives you the ability to edit some of these other items. So there are 50 or 60, I would say, things that you want to edit within this profile, and we've got a great checklist for that that we'll make available. But this covers some of the high points, just some of the visual things here at the top. So you want custom photography, high quality photos and videos of the practice, because they are prominent here at the top of these profiles. You want to make sure that your primary category, so Google has primary categories and they have secondary or alternate categories for your practice. So you want to make that sure that primary is set properly. So, dentist or orthodontist or pediatric dentist. And then there's a lot of secondary categories that may apply to your practice depending on the services you offer. The other things you can build out products and services within these profiles. They have a spot for frequently asked questions. So all of the fields within these profiles are important to update. And one other thing I want to point out, the first thing I was talking about, you can see in this screenshot here, it says own this business. So you can just click there.
Yeah.
It'll do a little bit of quick verification for you, and then you can start editing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And another important element of the Google Business Profile, or the GBP, is posting. So, Google obviously loves it when folks use their own products. Like Brian said, they want to keep you on the search results page as much as possible. They want you engaging with your own GBP and engaging with potential patients there. And so it's really important to use the posting feature in GBP as well. And so this is an opportunity to post your own content similar to what you would do on a social media platform. You essentially can put in a short message or caption and include a link. And we always recommend that clients and dental practices link back to their website to relevant, say blog posts or service pages, share information that's going on. You can even share some of the things that you're doing in the community there. It's a great way to sort of help introduce folks to the idea and the personality of your practice right directly through your Google Business Profile. And Google is actually looking for practices and rewarding practices that keep that content fresh. So definitely make sure you're posting on your GBP at least once a week, ideally more, but once a week is good. For the clients we work with, we try to refresh that content 3 times a week. But any effort you can put into that is going to pay dividends. So make sure you stay on top of the posts. The other thing that we haven't mentioned yet thus far is going to be Google reviews. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, and we're going to dig into that a little bit later on here in the webinar. But it is super important, what I would call mission critical, to stay on top of those reviews and generate consistently new 5-star reviews for your practice, because Google is increasingly using reviews as a ranking factor when it comes to positioning dental practices in local search. So definitely opportunities there. I wanted also to talk about how you can measure the success of the optimizations that you've done with your Google Business Profile. And one of the best ways to do that is to use a unique tracking number on your Google Business Profile so that you can measure the traffic as well as the phone calls and leads that are coming from your GBP. And so one of the things that we always do with clients is we implement tracking numbers on the GBP and other marketing channels. And within the GBP, it's also very important, in order to communicate consistency to Google, that you use your actual real phone number. So that may be a landline or a VoIP number that you have dedicated for your practice. You can actually set that as an alternate number in GBP. And that's something that we always recommend, because Google, understands that practices need to and want to use tracking numbers to measure results. but you also want to be making sure that Google understands what your actual phone number is so that there's consistency across your listings online. And that'll be even more important as we talk about the importance of directory listings, what we call citations, here in a moment. Another key and critical element, though, of optimizing your practice's local SEO is on-site content. So, Brian, do you want to tee that one up?
Yeah. So as we saw earlier, I think it was almost 20% of local SEO was what we call on-site. And this is the technical basics on your website. So, you want it to be fast, you want it to be coded well, you want to have title tags and heading tags set properly. You want to communicate relevance of your. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit here.
No, you're all good. I
Um,
was throwing it up there, so you had it right at hand.
yeah, definitely. So you want to communicate the relevance of your practice to Google for those local searches. You can also interlink your website with different Google properties. So, how does this look in practice? Embedded Google Maps at the bottom of your site in the footer, on the contact page. Whenever your address is listed on your practice website, link it to a specific URL for your Google business profile, so you're communicating to Google, hey, yes, this is our location, this is our practice, we're doing things the right way. There are some more advanced strategies here that we won't necessarily jump into on this webinar, but just getting the basics right of embedded Google Maps, GPP links with your address, proper technical, titles, heading tags, schema set up, proper internal linking. And depending on if your practice is single location or multi-location, if it's multi-location, you do want to have those dedicated um, location pages. And even if you're single location, in a lot of cases, it may make sense to target specific surrounding cities or communities
Yeah.
with location pages. Like here in Raleigh, for example, some of the outlying towns and cities are like Cary and Apex. So if you are a practice in Raleigh, you may have pages on your website that are for like a Cary dentist with some details about that community and links to great resources. So there are specific ways that you can do that to signal to Google relevance as well.
Absolutely. Next up, we want to talk about what we were just mentioning there a moment ago, which is local, what we call citations in marketing, and it's a fancy, in my opinion, just kind of useless word that describes local directory listings or local listings. And so these are opportunities to list your practice in other directories online. So these could be, sites as popular and authoritative as Facebook or Yelp. They could also be, healthcare specific, like Health Grades or yellowpages.com, which, believe it or not, is still a thing. There are opportunities for building these local citations, which include what we call your NAP information, your name, address, phone number, and also in many cases, a website URL. These are opportunities to really communicate to Google the relevance of your practice, the credibility of your practice, and they're all just signals that we call them signals that communicate to Google. This is exactly what your practice is, who it serves, who it's relevant for, and in particular, the consistency of your address, your contact information, that sort of thing, so that everything is communicated as clearly as possible to Google, and it makes it very easy for Google to parse. There are two opportunities for these local listings across the internet. Some are what we call organic. These are free. These are opportunities to get listed, and there are many, many, many opportunities. And we're going to talk about tracking them here in just a second. But there are also additional opportunities to get your practice listed in some paid directories as well, where you can sometimes get additional benefits like additional links to your website, some other features, that sort of thing. We'll look at that here in a moment. You can see here in this example on the right, this is from healthgrades.com. You see two organic or non-paid listings at the bottom. An opportunity here again to list your practice name, your address, your phone number, that sort of thing. But then at the top, you also have a featured listing, which is a good way to get a little bit more visibility on your practice. Depending on what your marketing budget is, you may consider these placements. But you can see here, there is some benefit to these. Dr. Reddy here has a link to her website, and also looks like a click to call button that makes it easy for folks to get in touch with her. But in general, there are a number of what we call, kind of best in class, first in class citations or local listing opportunities for dentists. Those include, what I said, Yelp, Facebook, Yellow Pages, Super Pages, Health Grades, of course. There are a number of different opportunities to get your practice listed. And so when we're talking about these local listings, again, called citations, we want to monitor them over time because, as practices change hands, sometimes maybe you've acquired a new practice and you're changing the name of the practice, or maybe you've moved locations. Over time, these citations can get out of date and there can be some errors associated with those. So you want to track those and make sure you're staying on top of potential errors and getting those corrected as quickly as possible, simply because any discrepancy in the information contained in those listings is going to confuse Google, essentially. Google's pretty smart, but it will take all the cues that it can get. So at DentalScapes, with all of our clients, we monitor citations. We do the work up front to build out citations that aren't there yet. And then we also do the cleanup and the monitoring necessary to make sure that everything stays consistent over time. Anything else that you would add to the conversation about local directory listings, Brian, at this point?
Yeah, there are, like, this tool specifically that that Dan, you have the screenshot here for. This will actually tell you which ones are high value, medium value, low value, because you certainly hit a point of diminishing returns with citations. So usually you can get the top 50 to 100 correct, and those are the ones that are really going to move the needle. So this tool, and there are some other ones out there, different ways to populate these citations.
Yeah.
Yext is a good one in addition to doing the ones you have to do by hand manually, which are reported on here.
Yeah, good call. Let's talk about link building now. So one of the other key ranking factors that we look at in terms of local SEO and also just SEO in general is links. And when we talk about links to your website and to your Google business profile, I think it's probably helpful to consider these links as votes. So Google essentially considers a link to your website or to your GBP as a vote from another external source that's essentially vouching for your credibility and saying, hey, we think that our audience would find this resource helpful, this dental practice authoritative on this particular topic or whatever it might be. And so Google uses links both to your website and also to your GBP, something that not everyone is really aware of. It uses those links to really better understand which practices are more authoritative within the local area. And so it's a great way to generate more authority and to communicate better relevance to Google is by building those links. And so links with local context in particular are going to be very, very helpful for local SEO. So we have opportunities to build links organically from non-paid sources. And I'm going to ask Brian to talk a little bit more about that here on the next page. There's also opportunities, depending on what your marketing budget is, to get some paid links. And some of those may be those directory listings that we were talking about on the last section. Getting more of like a featured profile on some of those citation pages. But again, paid listings are only going to be, an option for certain practices with a certain budget and that sort of thing. But that said, there are so many opportunities to generate more inbound links to your website, what we call backlinks, organically from non-paid sources as well. So, Brian, did you want to just kind of cover some of those opportunities?
Yeah, so citations, which we've already talked about a little bit, there's nothing magic about citations at their core. A lot of the value that comes from them is their links back to your site. So that plays into what we're talking about here. We have a specific strategy that we use with our press release platform to generate local links to the GBP and the website. That really helps practices with authority. But online press releases can be one. If you've written a great blog post and you have the opportunity to guest post that elsewhere, that can be a big benefit. Where I really see the value for dental practices and orthodontists is um, in these local sites that have local relevance. So, this might be a local chamber of commerce. It might be, an alumni site, for your high school or university, or, it might be a community partner. One of the really good ways that we've seen to get these types of links are local sponsorships.
Yeah.
We've got a practice that sponsors a 5K every year and puts a team into it. And the cost is minimal there, but he gets a link back to his site. He gets logos on promotional material. So there are on and offline benefits to those types of sponsorships, and I'd really just recommend keeping an eye out for those types of opportunities, because they can be very low cost in comparison to the benefit that you get out of them.
Absolutely. If there are organizations or businesses that you partner with frequently, ask for a link. And in many in many cases, you may be able to offer them a link on your website as well. So trusted community partners or resources within the community that can also position your practice as a helpful resource. So definitely a lot of opportunities there. And I love what you said about sponsorships, Brian, because I think a lot of people miss the benefit, the added benefit that they get from links from those potential sponsorships and opportunities as well. So definitely good to consider. The other thing that's really important when we talk about link building is local context when we're talking about local SEO. So, there is a definite difference in terms of how Google views the specific context of the link that you have. So not only is it important, of course, to generate those links, like Brian was saying, from local organizations and businesses and resources in your specific community, because that shows Google that you're involved and you're engaged and you're a fundamental component of that community. But it's also important to position those links in context themselves. So there is a huge difference between a link, what we call anchor text, that says click here and that leads to your website. There's a big difference. You get added benefit from a link that has better relevance locally, such as dentist in Dallas, or even better yet, something that is very, very focused on what you offer, such as Dallas Implant Dentist. Really cool opportunities to optimize for local search there. Let's talk also, we were talking earlier on the GBP section, the importance of tracking your performance. Track your backlinks too. There are a number of tools that we use on a daily basis at DentalScapes. You don't necessarily have to do this as a practice yourself. You can let your marketing partner do this for you, but make sure you're tracking your backlinks, tracking the progress over time as you generate those. And also a really cool opportunity for practices to pick up new links is to look at the links that your competitors and competing practices in the area have. That's something that we call gap analysis. And so you can look at those links, and oftentimes you'll find opportunities for additional links to your website that maybe weren't even on your radar and may also be free. So it's a really cool opportunity to sort of audit what's going on in the local environment and where you can actually pick up a few more quick wins. Anything that you would say, also about tracking, your performance with link building and that, Brian?
I think it's really important, Dan, just to echo what you said, to generally it's going to be a marketing partner, because this is a little bit in the weeds, to do this type of analysis and find these opportunities for your practice, because in every market and every community, there are, I'll call them low hanging fruit. There's low hanging fruit as far as the links go. And it's different in most markets. So doing these types of analyses are important to find those and really get value for your practice here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's shift a little bit here as we come to a close. One thing that we've talked about intermittently throughout, as being increasingly important for local SEO, is reviews. And so generating as many 5-star reviews as possible for your practice, doing that consistently and frequently. It's a measure we look at called velocity. So Google is not only concerned with the overall number of reviews your practice has, the average rating, of course, but also how frequently you're generating those and the cadence by which you're acquiring new reviews. So reviews are obviously critically important from a trust building perspective. So patients are looking at reviews. We know from research that almost 50% or more percent of patients are looking at reviews and consulting those on your GBP before making a decision on booking an appointment. And so obviously important for trust building, but Google, like I said, is increasingly prioritizing these. I think we saw in the previous slide that it looks like reviews account for about 15 to 20% of the weight that Google assigns your practice in local search. And so it is critically important that your practice be focused on generating new reviews from patients. And so at DentalScapes, this is something we work day in and day out with our patients, with our clients on. And there's some best practices for acquiring these. Brian, do you want to touch on a couple of these?
Yeah, so one of the big ones is, and this is not unique to asking for reviews. It's the same as paying bills or anything else. If it's automated, it's going to happen more reliably.
Yeah.
So we recommend, if we have our own, if your marketing company has their own platform where these can be automated, we see a lot of practices using their practice management platform, like a Weave or something similar, to automate this. But first thing, do it where your patients are. They're generally not an email. You can email these out and it's going to go into spam. People are going to ignore it. Where are we? We're in front of our phones most of the day. So if you can utilize SMS, text messages to request these reviews, you're going to have a lot higher response rate. In a lot of cases, it's useful to ask them for feedback before you ask for a Google review. Now, you don't want to necessarily gate these reviews based on their response, but it does give people the opportunity to be heard before they leave a public response. So if you have somebody that you didn't know was unhappy, but they are unhappy, a lot of times they will provide you with that feedback in the initial internal survey, I'll call it. And that way, you don't get a negative public review. But interestingly, I will point out that, it's important to get a ton of 5-star reviews, but, of equal or of similar importance is how you respond to those occasional 1 or 2 or 3-star reviews. Because people do search those out to see hey, what could go wrong and how did the practice respond to it? So keep in mind there are best practices around responding to negative reviews. And keep in mind that those responses are really for the hundreds of other people who are going to be reading it. And not primarily for the person who left that review in the first place.
Yeah, I think those responses to the occasional negative review is just absolutely critical and really demonstrates to others, like you said, that they're more important really for those that are just, reviewing them before making a decision. But it really communicates to those people the values of your practice and what you stand for and how you handle conflict. So, and how you resolve things. And, to that end, I'm going to actually share in the replay email that goes out after this webinar a link to a blog post that we did on responding to negative reviews and the importance of doing that, and some best practices that you can take with you. And I hope you find that helpful. But that about closes out, the fundamental elements of local SEO that we wanted to dive into today. And as Brian already mentioned, this is stuff that can quickly get into the weeds. And so for most dental practices, a lot of the elements we've talked about today are things that can be more effectively managed by a marketing agency on your behalf. That said, if you have in-house staff or team members that have the time and capability to manage some of this stuff, there are several quick wins that we've gone over here today that can be implemented pretty quickly on your end, regardless of whether or not you're working with a marketing partner like DentalScape. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you are interested in a conversation with Brian or I about how to better leverage online marketing, including local SEO for your practice, just go to dentalscapes.com/start and request a free strategy call. We'd love to hop on the phone with you and talk a little bit about your practice, get to know it, see kind of what your pain points are, and we can put together a comprehensive plan to sort of address those points and move your practice forward. So again, like I said, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us today here. I hope you found it helpful. We will be sending out a replay link that will include some of those assets that we've already talked about. Brian mentioned we have a checklist for your GBP and optimizing that we're going to include in that as well. And yeah, if we can be of any help at any time, just visit us at DentalScapes.com. You can request that strategy call at DentalScapes.com/start, or you can always email us and reach us directly at hello@DentalScapes.com. So thank you so much. Brian, thank you so much for hopping on here today. Really appreciate your time as well. And thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.